Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
We didn't see a former president who had just rallied the mob to attack, sitting in the private dining room off the Oval Office in the White House and doing nothing for hours.
So that was President Biden yesterday, and I want to sort of put a bow on this because on Alex Garrett Podcasting, I have wanted to be a podcast that talks about things that should be trending, but quite frankly aren't. And this is not trending. The speech is his forceful rebuke of President Trump is, but not the underlying stuff. For instance, I looked at AtlanticCouncil.org, which is sort of a human rights thing, and they talk about Venezuela and how the up-and-coming generation of Venezuela can change the tide from the oppressiveness of Maduro and co. And, that's been going on for years, even with Chavez. But do you want to know what the President of the United States did on December 9th, 2021? And this is at a time where there's skyrocketing doubts of election integrity in our own country. Skyrocketing time for that. I mean, I've got to pull up the stats for you. It's astounding. But do you know that this president that yesterday said this?
Because his bruised ego matters more to him than our democracy or our Constitution. He can't accept he lost.
At a time where there is some election integrity issues going on, making sure we have secure elections in America, this president and this administration is doling out a whopping $424.4 million toward globally making sure there are free elections in places like Venezuela and other countries. It's a global initiative. It's not giving money to America that I could see. So how can you say, Mr. President Biden,
the former President of the United States of America has created and spread a web of lies about the 2020 election? He's done so because he values power over principle.
How can you say that, but not put your money where your mouth is for America and dole out $424 million to this country alone to do all the stuff that you want to have across the world? Supporting free and independent media, fighting, which, by the way, journalists are being subpoenaed, and radio hosts and others of the like are being subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. Is that free and independent media? Fighting corruption. We see corruption all over the place in this country. Where's the fighting for that? Bolstering democratic reforms. Advancing technology for democracy. And defending free and fair elections with political processes. There is an amount of people that think our nation is not a fair election country anymore. There is doubt. President Trump, unfortunately, casted that doubt, but there is doubt. 100%. So instead of fixing that doubt and ensuring that every election is integral here in America, this presidential initiative, which was announced about a month ago, at the first ever Summit for Democracy, December 9, 2021, said we're going to dole out $424 million globally for fair elections. I want to hammer home on this point. USAID will provide up to $2.5 million to launch a coalition for securing electoral integrity, which will bring together governmental and non-governmental partners within the international electoral and integral community to develop norms, guiding principles, and codes of conduct on prioritized election integrity issues, while promoting adherence to those basic standards. The USAID will provide an additional $17.5 million to establish a Defending Democratic Elections Fund to pilot, scale, and apply evidence-based responses to threats to electoral integrity and related political processes globally. This will address domestic and foreign electoral manipulation, electoral violence, gender-based violence, illicit domestic and foreign political financing, election-related misinformation, and barriers to the political participation of marginalized populations, like Venezuela, I believe. They're going to also add $55 million to launch Partnerships for Democracy. Global and flexible funding mechanism will enable the U.S. government to surge cross-sectoral assistance to reform-minded partner governments to assist them in delivering visible benefits to their populations in areas such as healthcare and education. Sounds great. But on the heels of January 6th, it shouldn't be just them that we assist. It should be our own country. I know he says domestic, but domestic should be our focus of sowing the doubts of those that don't believe in 2020 being real. I believe it was real, but I also believe that people have the right to doubt it, not storm the Capitol, but doubt it. And we have to qualm those doubts, qualm those fears, qualm those worries, because the more doubts you have, the less fair of an election. And I say this because if you're doubting the election, why even vote? Why did the Georgia Senate races go to the Democrats? Because actually Republicans were sowing doubt that those elections would be fair and balanced. That's why Republicans didn't really show up for that. So let's stop with the posturing that this democracy matters. Because if it mattered a lot more, the money would be doled out to making sure people knew our elections had integrity, would ensure our elections were not any kind of way. So while I applaud the speech from January 6, 2022, I also say, put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. If you so believe that the former president did nothing but sow election disinformation and sow the January 6th riots with his rhetoric, then fix it in your own borders, President Biden. Fix it in your own borders, Vice President Harris. Let's not dole out millions of dollars to over a bunch of countries when our own country can't even fix itself. We can't fix itself right now. We've got a daily record of 1 million cases just this past Monday of COVID. We've got jobs reports missing the mark, 200,000 instead of 400,000. We cannot help ourselves. But we want to help other countries. Where do we find the money to appropriate for other countries except ourselves? Where do we find this money? How do we do that? Feels like the same premise of how do we hike the debt ceiling? How do we make sure more money's printed, which causes inflation? How do we make sure that money gets printed and doled out to the tune of $424 million, but we have an unsolved issue with the right? We have unsolved things here. We have to take care of our own borders first. And that is what I hope happens. Because if you say things like this,
the former President of the United States of America has created and spread a web of lies about the 2020 election. He's done so because he values power over principle.
We're spreading our finances to other countries in the summit to help ensure their elections are integral. We need to focus on us again, President Biden. You're the administration in charge. You have to do that. You cannot rely on someone else to do that. You have to take the charge now. The private sector can try and get involved, but at the end of the day, we are a country with feeling like no rudder. It's just whirling around, case after case, mandate after mandate, and yet we're doling out $424 million to other countries. If anything, January 6th taught us that we have to save our democracy, that our democracy and our republic is at stake. And doling out millions of dollars to some other country that is not in our borders is not the answer right now. I'm sorry, it's not. And you might say domestically you're going to keep an eye on domestic elections. I swear to God, I hope you do. I pray you do. But doling it all out to the rest of the world? While yes, we want all these other countries to have fair elections and to not be oppressive regimes, there is a sector of this society in America that feels oppressed right now. And we have to fix that. We have to fix it one step at a time. 1 penny at a time if we have to. $1 at a time. But it has to go to us and the hurting that we're going through right now. It's nice to have initiatives. It's nice to do things and nice to be the policeman of the world. But right now we have to be our own policeman in a sense. Because no one feels like they're stopping this train from going way downhill before going back up on the up and up. So let's focus on ourselves. Let's take yesterday and what January 6th means and work on ourselves because of it. For if we don't work on ourselves, we will lose ourselves, while other countries will have fair and free elections. We will have lost us as a society. Does anybody want that? No. Do we need money here to bolster a lot of different things? Absolutely. Do we need encouragement to work again? Absolutely. Can we afford another 4.4 million people dropping out of a workforce? Heck no. That's why it's got to be prevented. That's why getting back to work has to be encouraged. Not told you can only be this, that, and the other if you want to go back to work. As safe as that is. The theory behind it is what's hurting the business today. And we can't let it be hurting anymore. So President Biden, you have 2022 to deal with this. And 2023. Let's see. And 2024. All of 2024. Let's see what you could do. Let's see what you could do in year 2. But it's got to be straightened out. Sad to hear about the loss of Sidney Poitier, the first African-American to win a Best Oscar. Lived a long life at 94 years old. That is now 4 legends in 2 weeks. We need to talk about life again, not death. And pouring money back into our own borders, within our own borders, is a start. I'm Alex Garrett. Put your money where your mouth is, President Biden, and fix this for all of our sakes.